120,000. Well, my Toyota Sequoia finally reached 120,000 miles, which is impressive. But now there's maintenance because I never replaced the timing belt. You should always replace the timing belt before 120,000 miles, or else it can snap on you. So that's what I'll be doing. And then there's way more other maintenance to do on this truck, so those will be for other videos. But let's do the timing belt first and then work on the other stuff later on, because timing belt's a big issue. If that breaks, your whole engine can just seize up and not work anymore, and then your whole truck's useless. Here's my timing belt kit ready to go. Came with the water pump. I might as well replace that as well, since I'm gonna be taking everything apart, and water pump should also be replaced at a certain amount of miles. So you should just do that, so you don't have to worry about that later on. So I got the brand new belt right here, the gaskets and bolts for the water pump, an automatic tensioner, and the other two tensioners, pulley tensioners. Let's disconnect the ground from the battery. So it'll be this one with a 10mm socket. Looking at the engine bay, I'm gonna have to take out the air intake, and then remove the radiator hoses. Probably remove the whole radiator. Obviously the fan, that's gonna come out because that's gonna get in the way. And I'm gonna also be working from underneath, so I have to take off the plate shield underneath the engine to gain access underneath. Then probably have to remove, I'm probably gonna have to remove this cover right here, because that's where the belt's gonna be. So first I'm gonna go underneath my truck and take off the undershield. And you're gonna want to take out these 12mm bolts. There's 3 in the front, and I think there should be, oh, here, 1 on each side in the back. So that's a total of 5 bolts that you need out. So 3 in the front, 2 in the back, 1 there, 1 over here. Got the shield plate taken out. Now I'm gonna drain the radiator fluid. Radiator fluid needs to be drained either way, because once I start taking off the radiator hoses and the how do you say this, the water pump out, there's gonna be coolant everywhere, so you don't want it just splashing into your face when you're working underneath or onto the sidewalk, because that's pretty illegal to have it drain on public sidewalks, driveways, because you can get fined, because animals can eat that fluid and get intoxicated, because to them it tastes sweet, but it's poisonous. I'm just going to be catching it in this container for now, and then take it to the recycling center afterwards. Remember, recycle your fluids properly. So to drain your radiator, there's this radiator plug right underneath this one right here. Just twist it open and fluid should be coming out, but you also want to probably open up the radiator cap from on top so that the flow goes more steadily. I'll show you. Air flowing inside the radiator helps it drain more properly. Just gonna keep it like that. Go back underneath. Twist the plug. That's a good steady flow. Now you're just gonna have to wait for it to drain completely. Gonna take a while, but make sure that the fluid's getting into your container or drain pan. Don't let it leak onto the sidewalk. Now, if you open this plug all the way out, more fluid will come out, but it'll probably come out too fast and it'll squirt this way, which will make a fountain up to here, and probably gonna end up with a mess. Now that the radiator's drained from the coolant, I'm gonna start taking this upper radiator hose off just by getting some pliers, squeezing this clamp and sliding it out. First clamp off. Now the second clamp needs to come off. Upper radiator hose off. Now it's time to get the lower radiator hose. And mine has this strap because the original clamp actually slipped off and my whole hose slid off, so I had to reinforce it with this. So you don't really have to worry about this because your truck probably doesn't have that, but yours probably has this. So this is the one you need to remove. Get off the cover next, the air intake, unclip this. 10mm bolts, top cover. Top cover removed, unclip the AC hose with another 10mm by removing another 10mm bolt. We got the hose disconnected from the clip. Now we're just gonna take off all the hoses connected to the air intake. So this one, this one, this one, and this one, and then remove this clip with the wiring harness to the mass airflow sensor. Now that all the hoses are removed, now it's just to loosen these straps with a 10mm bolt. These are a 10mm socket here and here, and then you can just slip that out. You might want to maybe label these vacuum hoses in case you forget where they come from. Air intake hose taken off. Just put this to the side. Now that we got the air intake hose out of the way, now we can get in here easier and clip this. Take the lower radiator hose off. Top clip off. Now lower clip. Now you're gonna want to have a catch pan underneath because coolant's probably still in the hoses. There's probably still some coolant in here. You want to make sure that it drips down into the pan. Like I said, coolant would probably still drip out. There you go. That's why you need a catch pan underneath. You might want to have some eye covering so this doesn't fall into your eye. I removed the little hose from the reservoir. Usually the clip would be like this, but I lost the one from up here a long time ago. You're gonna want to remove these two other hoses, these smaller hoses underneath the radiator. Just get your pliers to get these clamps off, and then you're gonna probably want to wiggle them around so they break free. And you just want to tuck the hose back in here like this so it doesn't, so the transmission oil doesn't drip. Same thing with this one. Gonna take off the plastic radiator shroud by removing these 10mm bolts. There's one up here. There's one down there. You probably can't see it. See. Down there. Same thing on the other side. One up here. One down there. Four bolts. So I got the radiator shroud removed, but when you're removing it, you want to unclip it. Get these clips out of the way. This one and this one, and then take off the bottom plastic part of the the shroud that goes around the fan in order to get the rest over the fan. So that comes off, and then you just easily just slide it up over the fan. The fan's not going to get in the way once you remove this part. And you don't want to lose these clips because you're going to want to put it back. I'm going to remove the entire radiator with this bolt right here. Going to be 12 millimeter. Then this bottom bolt right here. This bolt, the other bolt is down. Right there. So it's going to be 4 bolts in total. Once you got all the 4 bolts off, you're going to want to lift it up and make sure you see when you lift it up, that needs to come out. The little like support, it's being supported by this. So you're going to want to be able to clear through this hole in order to pull it completely out. If I actually dropped it down, I'm actually going to pull it out from underneath since I can't really fully pull it out due to the fan hitting it. So from underneath should be more easier. Just be careful. Next, we're going to remove the fan by taking these 12 millimeter nuts off of the fan mount, and we're going to wiggle it back and forth, but be careful to not damage anything inside. Wiggle it until it comes out, and we're carefully, you don't want that. Now with a 14 millimeter socket, we want to turn this pulley to the left to loosen the belt, and then with that we'll be able to take the belt off. There's the serpentine belt taken off. Put that to the side. Take the fan pulley out of the way too. Should be really easy. Just like that, so it's out. Now let's remove the automatic tensioner for the serpentine belt pulley. And this is a left-hand screw, so in order to take it out, we're gonna have to, normally it'd be righty-tighty, now it's righty-loosey. So you wanna turn it clockwise to take it off. When you're taking off the tensioner puller, you're gonna want to be careful because I just broke part of the pulley, the tensioner pulley right there. There, I'll show you. See, the whole screw came out with that part, and that part's really fragile since that's aluminum, and I'm pretty sure it's like casted, and then the metal of the screw is way stronger than that, so it kind of just ripped that out because it's seized. So you want to put some WD-40 to loosen that before you take out the bolt and let it sit there for a while. Yeah, you don't want to rush these things. Now I'm gonna have to get a new tensioner pulley, more expensive repair. Now we're gonna take off this this line that goes to the oil cooler down there by removing this nut, which is this bolt, which is a 10 millimeter bolt, and this nut up here, right here. Don't know if you can see it. This one right here, that helps. That mounts this clamp onto the block. Remove those 2 clamps, this bolt, that clamp. Then we're gonna unclamp the hose from down here and the other hose up here to get this line out of the way. And you're gonna want something to catch the coolant that's gonna drop out. Now when we're moving the line out, the clamp is gonna come out towards you with the line. So be careful with this wire. You might want to disconnect it or just slowly pull it out and tuck it underneath. Pull it out and make sure it goes underneath without basically breaking the wire. Like I said, when you remove the hose clamp, coolant will probably come out, so you want to catch it. There you go. Just gonna wait for that to drain. Some coolant dip all on the floor. Gonna clean that up. So I took off the coolant line, but I forgot to mention the third hose up here. Just unclamp that one. So it was like that. Now I'm gonna remove the AC compressor. So what I'm gonna do is take off the small bracket in the front because it's blocking a bolt that we need to be able to remove the AC compressor. First disconnect it from the wiring harness right there. Remove that screw right there with a Phillips screwdriver. Put some WD-40 so you don't strip the top of the screw. And once that bracket is off, you can take off the bolts on the side. That one, I believe it's a 14mm bolt. And then there's 2 more bolts underneath that you need to get in order to get it off. Now that we removed the small bracket from the AC compressor, see here, the compressor is actually bolted onto this mount. So this bracket was in the way. So now, once we take off the top bolt, which I mentioned, it's over here, right there. We should have no problem taking off the compressor. First, I'm gonna go underneath and take off the 2 14mm bolts holding the AC compressor. One is here. The other one is that one right there. So one. Once I took off the lower front bolt for the AC compressor, I noticed this bracket's still in the way, so you're gonna have to also take off the bracket, which you're gonna need a 12mm. Take off this 12mm nut to get this bracket out of the way. Bracket's off. Here's the bracket. All right, I got the 2 lower bolts off. Now I'm gonna take off the upper bolt, which is, like I said, over here, right there. And then slowly wiggle it out and lower it somewhere where it won't disturb me. There you go. I lowered that down to the side just a bit. Should be stable enough to be able to work over here. I'm gonna take off the top of the water pump. This bolt and this bolt need to come out. They're 12mm bolts. Then once they're out, just wiggle it. Just try to wiggle it out. Probably hit it with a rubber mallet if you can, if you have one. It's gonna be kind of tough. There's that piece out with the thermostat housing. We're gonna be reusing this part, of course. Next, we're gonna take off these plastic covers for the timing belt cover. First, we're gonna take the wiring, unclip the wiring harnesses from them. Gonna unclip We're gonna unclip it from here. Unclip this wiring harness. Unclip. There's another clip right there. Another clip right there, and then we're just gonna put those to the side. And then over here, we're gonna unclip these hoses and put them to the side where they don't disturb us, and then take off the plastic cover. Okay, removing this cover, there's gonna be 3 10mm bolts, one there, and one under here. And there's gonna be this 10mm nut, and you're gonna want to take off these 12mm bolts here and here. There's the passenger covers off. For some weird reason, mine didn't have the 3rd bolt. I don't know why. I don't know nobody before ever took off the timing belt or the covers before. Well, this is how it looks like inside the engine bay right now. I don't know, looking at the belt, it looks pretty good still, but Toyota does recommend that you change it every 90,000 miles. Damn. Still got some good tension in it too. But remember, replace it every 90,000 miles. Now for the driver's side, I took off, or I unbuckled the harness from here to be able to move it to the side. Yeah, I got everything unclipped, I'm pretty sure. And then there's gonna be 10mm bolts holding this guy in, one here. Right, wait up. One here, one here, one here, another one down here, but mine doesn't have the fourth one, so it's weird. Toyota's missing parts for mine. Now I slowly took it off the driver's side cover, and remember this front wiring harness? I don't want to break that, so I slowly took it out. Now I'm gonna unclip it from the inside. Then I'm gonna pull this gasket out and feed the wires through. Like that, push the gasket out, then just feed the wires through the hole to be able to take off the cover. Okay, so the wire won't feed through that hole because I had this clip still. So I had to pry a small screwdriver in the back of this clip and lift the clip up. There's like a small clip in there that you lift up to free it from this clip up here. So now it should be free. But yeah, it was like a struggle to figure out. There you go. The clip that you have to lift up is this one right here. A small little bit in order to take this part of the clip off. Now I want to get this tensioner pulley assembly out of the way, but first I need to get the power steering pump out of the way and the alternator, because the alternator's mounted onto this and this is mounted onto the alternator. First I'm gonna remove I'll be removing the power steering pump by this bolt right here, this nut right here. Then there's another bolt, you can see it right there, and they're all going to be 14mm. Okay, got the power steering put to the side for now. I had to get the reservoir loose, and I had to loosen this hose up from over there, from the top air intake manifold, because it's all connected here. And I had to kind of force it out a bit, pull it out, and now I'm put it to the side. Now I'm going to take off the alternator with 14mm bolt up here, then the other 14mm bolt down there, and pull it forward, and you should just get it out and put it to the side again. Got the alternator off, put it to the side. Be careful where you put it. Now I'm going to take off the tensioner for the serpentine belt assembly. Take off this 12mm nut, this other 12mm nut, and there's one right here, 12mm bolt to get off, and slide it out. And I'm obviously going to get a new one for this. Right, got the automatic tensioner pulley assembly off for the serpentine belt. Now I'm going to take off the fan mount bracket assembly. These 12mm bolts, one here, or this is a nut, a bolt there. That looks like a 14mm nut that needs to come off, and another 14mm bolt that needs to come off from down there, and pull that out. Fan bracket assembly taken off. Just how it looks like in the engine bay now. Now I'm going to take off the harmonic balancer pulley. I'm using a pulley holder with a breaker bar attached to it, and with another breaker bar with a 20mm socket. I'm going to take out this bolt by going this way, and while I'm going this way, this is going to hit the frame over here to make it stop from moving so much, and then I'll be able to get the bolt out. was able to get the bolt out. It was quite a struggle. High torque specs for this, which is why it was so difficult. Now I'm gonna pull out the harmonic balancer out. Sometimes it's very easy just to pull it by hand, but other times you're gonna need a pulley extractor or a pulley remover to get it out from the crank. Like that, I was able to just pull it out by hand. A lot of force again. I pulled it out even with the harmonic balancer puller. That actually helped give me some leverage by pulling it here. Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention that I did set the pulley to 0 with that one mark. It's just best to do that to make sure that all the marks are lined up here and there. And then once we get this cover off, I'm gonna put the bolt back on to be able to turn these cams to these marks, the T marks, to be able to service the timing belt. Because if I leave the marks right here at this mark, which is what the OEM manufacturers say to do the timing belt on, the cams would actually spring back at you, so it'll be a tooth off all the time. And with the T marks, it just makes it more easier to service the timing belt so that the cams don't spring off. I'm gonna take off the cover. It has 3 10mm bolts, one here, one here, and one over here. Get those out to take off the cover. Turns out there's actually 4 10mm bolts on this cover. It's actually way down here. See it right there underneath? That's your 4 10mm bolt that you can take out. We got the cover removed. Now we can take off this right here. You don't want this to be damaged because this helps the computer tell when it's at top dead center with this little sensor here. So you don't want these teeth or this little plate to be damaged. And when you put it back in, you want the concave in part to be facing you. So you can see how it's kind of like bowl shaped. It's not perfectly straight. Faces like this. Want to remember how you took it out. Concave in, facing towards you. All right, so now I'm gonna put on the harmonic balancer back on, because if you remember, we're gonna set the timing marks to the T to be able to service the belt. And right now I'm just making sure that everything's lined up. Those marks are lined up to there, and there's a mark in here. You see it right here. This mark is supposed to be lined up with like this small indentation right there. It's really hard to see. It's very, very small and faint. That seems to be lined up. That's lined up. Now we're gonna move those positions to the T. All right, there we go. Move the marks to the T. That mark's on the T, and I don't really think there's an indentation down here to tell you how much you moved it to the T. But now we're just gonna take off the harmonic balancer again. So now I'm gonna take off the tensioner right here for the pulley. These 2 bolts right here. I think they're 12mm bolts. Now once you take off the tensioner, the pulley's gonna back off from the belt, and the belt's gonna be loose. And then once that happens, you're able to take off the belt completely, and then we'll be able to get to the water pump and take that off and replace it. Our tensioner is removed, and when you take it off, you want to make sure that your cam's positions did not jump. Looks like it didn't jump. We're okay. And as you take off the belt, you also want to make sure they don't jump as well, because there's still some tension here, so careful. Old timing belt not removed. It easily slide out. I'm looking, doesn't look like the cams jumped, so we're good. And looking at this old timing belt, it seems pretty good still, but you know, you can never know just by sight. It is worn down somewhat, but Toyota make some good timing belts. If I were you, should definitely go original. Go to a Toyota and get yourself a new timing belt when needed, original, so that it lasts the longest. Now, comparing the old timing belt with the new timing belt that I got from O'Reilly's, they feel and look different, but who knows, maybe over time this one will turn into like a similar form like this one. Yeah, honestly, it feels like it's made of different material. That's why I would always go with original Toyota timing belts. All right, so now I'm also going to be replacing these pulleys. Might as well, since I'm already here. There's a 14mm bolt right in here that you're going to want to take out to be able to remove this. And this right here, it's going to be an L. I don't know what size, but with this has to be taken out to be able to remove all this pulley all together. Okay, so right now I took off the pulley on this side, put the screw back in just so I don't lose it. But right here, you're gonna need one of these or a big L tool. And well, this one almost fits, but it's still too loose, and I don't want to put this in here, try to remove that bolt and strip it. So I'm gonna go find a bigger one for this size, and then for right now I'm just gonna try to take off the water pump, because I think I can still manage to take out the water pump, even though this may be in the way, but we'll see. Right before I remove the water pump, I'm gonna take off the cam position sensor, because I don't want to damage it if I'm gonna pull out the water pump. It's kind of like in between there, you see. I don't want to mess up the wire and then have to buy a new position sensor. So I'm gonna remove this 10mm bolt right here, and this one right here with another 10mm bolt, I think. Now I'm taking off the timing belt tensioner pulley by this 10mm L tool for this bolt. I want to be careful because I hear that these the threads break because the bolt is made of a different material than what the oil pump is made of. So I just tapped it a bit before actually applying a lot of force. Here's our timing belt tensioner pulley. There's a washer in the back, don't want to lose that. Now we're going to take off the water pump, and it seems like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bolts and 1 nut to take off. They're 12mm. You're gonna want to remove this little plastic cover right here, and don't forget to put it back in when you reinstall the timing belt. Now we're gonna pull out the water pump itself now that the bolts are out. First I tapped on it here with the rubber mallet, and here a bit with not too much force, and also down here a bit to try to break the seal. It was still pretty hard, so then I wedged a crowbar in between right here, the block, and this little like nub, and seems to have broke the seal. When I applied the crowbar, I didn't even put that much force, so be careful. You don't want to put too much force and break something. And then I put the crowbar here as well to evenly separate it. So just don't put too much force. You don't need that much. As you're sliding it out, coolant will be coming out because there's still coolant remaining inside. So you want to have a catch can down there. Now here's our old water pump. It took quite a bit to take it out, a lot of fighting. And then here's how it looks like inside now. Now, gonna want to slowly take off that old gasket so I don't leave any of the residue behind. Either way, if there is, I'm still gonna go back around and clean it thoroughly to be able to place where the new gasket's gonna go for the water pump. Okay. Water pump is out. You're gonna want to take off this O-ring right here, and that's gonna be replaced before we put in the new water pump. Should come in our kit. Here it is. It's gonna be replaced. So I went ahead and cleaned the area where the new gasket's gonna be sitting on, and here's our new gasket. You can tell how it's gonna go on by the shape it looks like. You can also go back to the reference of how the old gasket used to sit. Slide it in, and then this O-ring, remember that one O-ring we took off from right here? This is that O-ring. It's new. It comes in the kit. Don't forget this. Here's our new water pump. Just go ahead and slide it on top of the new gasket. Now, in order to know you're getting the water pump on right, you're sliding it in right, is through these two studs right here and here. That's where the water pump should be sliding onto, and then you're going to want to position that coolant tube into here correctly. So be careful. Okay, water pump is in place. I put some soapy water on that O-ring up here so this could slide right in, or not soapy water, just soap on top around the O-ring. It was able to slip right in. Now as I put on the bolts back how they were, I'm putting on some thread lock onto the bolts because there are vibrations here the most, so I don't want these bolts to get loosened up. So it's best to use thread lock. I'm using this medium thread lock. It should be good for hand tightening bolts, and so this medium hold won't be too tight or too hard to take out again when I have to service these parts again. So now the kit does come with these new bolts because these old bolts, they do tend to stretch and they may not be able to grab as good like they used to before. So they always say it's best to use new bolts. Not too sure if it's a good idea because these do look like it's made of a different metal, different material, so to speak. You look right here. Not too sure, but I'm gonna use the new bolts just in case. There's all the screws or all the bolts in place. For whatever reason, it didn't come with a new nut, so I just put in the old nut and hand tighten all the bolts in this nut. Hand tighten. You don't want to use an impact or anything for this, because later we're gonna be doing these at torque spec with a torque wrench. Here we got our torque wrench ready to tighten these up. So the bolts are they're gonna be 16 foot-pounds, these bolts right here, and the stud bolts, this one and the nut, are gonna be 13 foot-pounds. So I'm gonna do like a cross pattern to tighten them slowly, and then I don't really know the actual pattern, but I'm just gonna do like a cross pattern, this one over then that one, and then this one, that one. Yeah. Now I got all the bolts up to 13 foot-pounds. So now I'm gonna go up to 16 foot-pounds for just these bolts, not the stud bolts or the nut, just the bolts. Okay, so now I'm gonna install the water inlet housing with the thermostat housing. You're gonna want to remove this old O-ring. Get a new O-ring in your kit. So just slide that on. And then you're gonna want to clean off the old gasket maker that it has here. And well, it does come with a new gasket, but it originally just uses gasket maker. So you could use this if you want, but I'm just gonna go with gasket maker, not this. For the gasket maker, I'm just gonna follow this groove all the way around, put gasket maker around that, and then put it on top of the water pump. Here's the inlet, put the gasket maker around, O-ring on. I applied some soap around the ring to be able to slip it into there, into here. And then I got the bolts ready to get them torqued now. Water inlets on, and remember these two bolts. This one's gonna be that one long bolt that you took out, and that's gonna be the short bolt. It's gonna be there. I did put thread locker blue on these just in case, and the torque spec is 13 foot-pounds for both. One thing you should do when you replace the water pump is also replace the thermostat, which is in here, but I already replaced it like 10,000 miles ago, so it's pretty new, so I don't want to change that, but you should. I recommend it. My kit did not come with a new thermostat, so that's why I didn't even replace it. Now I went ahead and put the cam position sensor back on. The top is going to be the 10mm bolt, and then the bottom is going to be the 10mm stud bolt. Now the torque spec for those two bolts are going to be around 66 inch-pounds. That's in inch-pounds, not foot-pounds, inch-pounds. I got the new idler pulley, this number 2 idler pulley on, and the 14mm bolt's going to be torqued down to 25 foot-pounds. I went ahead and put the number 1 idler tensioner pulley, this one right here. I went ahead and put the bolt in. I haven't tightened it yet because because since it goes through the oil pump, I used lock thread on the threads at the back of the bolt, so that oil doesn't come out. It's not really a big deal if you do or don't use it, lock thread, but I went ahead and did it just in case. That's what Toyota recommends. That's what the research I did. I see some people do. Now the torque spec for the bolt is going to be 25 foot-pounds, just like the other pulley. Now I'm trying to put on the timing belt itself. I got some clamps on holding it right now in position. Okay, so the left is going to go over here. This is the left cam, and the right cam is over here. You want to get this lined up with these marks here, this mark here, lined up. Now the part I'm having trouble on is lining it up from underneath. Look up here. This is the indentation that we need to get this marked on, but every time I keep putting it on, it keeps missing by one tooth. So what I'm gonna do is put back the harmonic balancer back on here, turn it counterclockwise just by one tooth, and then hopefully that will be able to get it on here, right? And just go clockwise again to make sure that this side is tight, or this side has the tension needed before we tighten this side with the automatic tensioner. All right, we're putting back the harmonic balancer back on and moving it a tooth counterclockwise. There you go. I moved it one tooth counterclockwise and it's lined up. The arrows are now pointing to this indentation here. Now I'm gonna put the harmonic balancer back on and put it back to the position where it was. So this side can be tight. So this side can have tension. Okay, so now that down there looks lined up. This still looks lined up. This still looks lined up. And most of the tension's over here on this side so far, which is good, because then all this slack is gonna go away once we put the automatic tensioner down there for this pulley. So this side will be all tight and everything should be good. So I mounted the new tensioner down there, this one, and it has those two bolts, 12mm bolts. They both get torqued down to 19 foot-pounds, and I slowly did it like one side a bit and the other side another bit and the other side again and that side. You kind of just want to go back and forth. And then I got both of them down to 19 foot-pounds, and then I just went back again just to check that they were both on 19 foot-pounds, and it should be good. And then I pulled the pin that should come with the new tensioners. So I pulled the pin, and now this pulley gave tension to the belt. So now I'm gonna remove these clamps. So now the timing marks shouldn't move. Everything seems good. Timing marks are in, or where they're supposed to be. And down there, we're all good. So now I got the crank pulley bolt back on, and what I'm gonna do is just make sure everything's fine. I'm gonna do 2 full revolutions, and if those 2 revolutions are correct, then the marks should line up where they need to be at the time marks. So this is just for checking right now. Okay, so after 2 full revolutions, the timing marks on the cams are lined up there and there. And there's that little indentation again with that little notch right there lined up. So we're all good. And you're not really gonna see those marks on the timing belt line up not until like 400 revolutions, and I don't really have time for that. Nobody has time to actually check that thoroughly for that. Now I put back the crank position plate for the sensor, and you want the concave part of the plate to be facing towards you. So it's gonna be like a bowl shape facing you. All right, now I put on the timing cover with the 4 10mm bolts that it has, and they're all torqued down to 66 inch-pounds. Make sure you remember to put back this cover. Goes in right in there, slips in right in there. Right, so now the harmonic balancer is back in place. I'm gonna put on the bolt for the harmonic balancer, but I got a new one because Toyota recommends that you always replace these whenever you do the servicing. They don't recommend using the old one. I have heard of people using the old one. don't know if it. I'm just going ahead and putting in a new one. This is Toyota certified. The reason you don't want to be using the same old bolt is because I have heard that the old bolt comes out due to the high vibrations. Maybe the people who did the job just didn't do it to torque spec. And then I did hear from like a Toyota forum of a Toyota technician that said he always reused the same bolt whenever they had to do the timing belt service. But I don't believe that, because don't believe whatever you read on the internet either. So now I'm gonna torque down the bolt to 181 foot-pounds. I got my harmonic balancer holder and a breaker bar or ratchet there to hold it from moving. And here's my torque wrench. Now I put the fan bracket sub-assembly back on. There you go. Make sure this lines up to the farthest stud to the right over here. This is gonna be lined up here. Then there's gonna be a stud up here. I put it through there, put on the bolt. Now this bolt's gonna be torqued down to 12 foot-pounds, and this nut as well. Then these two 14mm bolts are going to be torqued down to, well, no, these 14mm bolts are going to be torqued down to 24 foot-pounds. Now I'm going to put the new drive belt tensioner pulley. If you remember my old one, when I tried to take off the pulley, it broke. So this is the new updated one from Toyota. I'm not too sure if it's actually going to work. They said it's for my vehicle, but the pulleys themselves on top, they're different diameter, and has me a bit worried that it might leave the belt loose. But let's go test it out. Okay. So I got the automatic drive belt tensioner assembly back on. Millimeter nuts up here, and the 12mm bolt down there, and they're going to be torqued down to 11 foot-pounds. So now I put this middle cover back on, and I kind of messed up because I was struggling to get it in because of this inlet right here. Maybe save this for afterwards, before or after you put this one on first. It's kind of a struggle to get it in there, but I kind of squeezed it, moved around to get it in there. Now just put back on the bolts. All right, I put the left cam cover back on, and I fed the wire through carefully. I put on the screws, but I haven't torqued them down yet. You're gonna want to put this. So you want to put the grommet on the cam position sensor wire. You're going to want to slide it till it covers the hole. You should be good. Grommets slide on perfectly. Torque down the 10mm bolts to 66 inch-pounds for the left cam cover. I'm just gonna reconnect all the wires. This one goes here, and that one goes with the sensor for the cam sensor. I already attached that one clip on top of this clip. This goes back on here, and connect this right here. reconnected the oil cooler line. This line right here goes all the way down to the oil filter. Go ahead and put the right cam cover on. 3 bolts, 3 10mm bolts, torque down to 66 inch-pounds. There, and one that goes right there. Right, I went ahead and mounted back the AC compressor. The 3 bolts, long one goes on top first, then there's a second long one that goes on the bottom with the bracket, and then there's a small one that goes all the way to the back. So one bolt there, one bolt with this bracket on, and this 12mm nut. And there's this other bolt right here. That one's the shortest, so that one goes in the back. Torque them down to 36 foot-pounds, just the 14mm bolts. Then I went ahead and just already connected all the wiring harnesses back to where they need to go. Don't forget about this bracket right here. This bracket, make sure it's in the place it needs to be, and then there's this bolt that I took out. You're gonna want to put that back on and connect it to this ground so the bracket doesn't move, and so that it gets grounded. This wire gets grounded. Don't know if I mentioned, but I also connected all the wiring stuff up here. This is connected, this is connected. Oh yeah, and before you mount the AC compressor back on, you're gonna want to make sure this wiring harness is towards back here. It goes through back here, because you don't want it out here in front, because it's probably gonna get caught in the belt right here. So make sure that it goes through the back before you mount it. Now I went ahead and put back the alternator, mounted it back on the stub bolt up here, and then I put the 14mm nut back on top, and then there's a 14mm bolt at the bottom right there, and they're both going to be torqued down to 29 foot-pounds. I went ahead and put the power steering pump back on this stud bolt now, and I put the 14mm nut back on top, and there's 2 14mm bolts that go inside in here. You see one here, one's down here, but I have a socket connected in order for me to get it easier in there. Now I'm going to torque them down to 32 foot-pounds. Alright, I got the fan pulley back on, and I'm going to attempt to put on the drive belt on first before I put the actual fan assembly back on. I was able to get the drive belt around all the pulleys, and it looks like our new automatic drive belt tensioner works just great. I was kind of worried because the pulley is smaller than the old one, it wasn't going to work, but yeah, it looks like Toyota made a good decision in updating these pulleys, because the old one, I bet a lot of people had the same issue with me, where this would break the bolt and where the pulley sits on. So yeah, this is the pattern of how I got it on, and you turn it to the left to tighten it, but also to adjust the belt to loosen it, and then just let it go to tighten it. And if you forget, you should have a sticker right here on your car that will show you how the whole belt assembly goes, the route. Now I mounted back the power steering reservoir back with these two nuts, and there's not really any torque sticks that I could find, but I just torqued them down to like about 6 foot-pounds, or just tighten it as much as you can when it feels just tight enough where you can't really put all that much pressure. Keep going. So now I reinstalled the radiator, and I carefully slid it through, and I made sure that the hook's mounted on right there. There's a hook that goes through here and another hook that goes through here to make sure that it's lined up well. And then I went and torqued down the 4 bolts, 4 12mm bolts. So one here, another one down there, then the other 2 I already showed you, right? One right here, the other one's down there. Bolts are torqued down to 9 foot-pounds. I also got the fan clutch mounted onto the fan pulley, and I couldn't really torque them down to spec because the 12mm nuts, that 4 of them that go around, it's hard to get a torque wrench in there, so I just did it by hand with a regular wrench, and I just hand tighten it till it felt tight enough equally on all 4. So now I'm gonna put on the fan shroud back on, and I unclipped the bottom plastic piece that goes here so it can slip over the fan when I just slip it into the engine bay and mount it onto the radiator. Fan shroud's in place. I torqued down the 10mm bolts to 44-inch pounds. One here, one down there. On the other side, one here, another one down there. Down underneath, I connected these transmission coolant lines back to the radiator. Put the clamps back, and now I'm gonna put the plastic shroud underneath. Clip back the bracket shroud piece. Back on top, I put the upper radiator hose back on. Clamped them on both sides. Then right here, the small radiator hose that goes to the coolant reservoir to the radiator. Clamp that. So now I put on the air intake hose back on. Gonna have to tighten the clamps, tighten the straps. Put this clip back on with this bolt, and connect all the little air vacuum hoses connected to the air intake hose. This one is back here, the small one. This wire, snap it back on. So now we just put on the top cover, and basically you're done. We're good to go. Done with the timing belt. Done with the timing belt servicing. Thing looks nice. I just have to put the underplate back on. That's it. Okay. Now as it's running, you want to fill the reservoir. Make sure the reservoir is all the way to the top. Make sure you burp out the system by having the heater all the way on, all the way up the fan, and it should have this, like, bubbles should be burping out. I already did that. Just add whatever more fluid that you can. So I've been driving it for a couple of days now. I haven't gotten any check engine light or anything. Everything seems fine. For the first 50,000 miles, I rechecked the coolant and I needed a couple more, but I just refilled it up to like the reservoir. to the reservoir full level, and everything seems fine. Doesn't seem to be the coolant seems to be leveled in the radiator. So looks like I did a good job with the timing belt servicing. No check engine light on. I don't hear any loud sounds or any bad sounds. Yeah, so this was the belt servicing, and I'll put some links in the description to some other videos that helped me with this servicing, so it can help you. Let me know what else I should do. I probably need to service the brakes soon, so I'll probably do something like that. The ball joints, some small stuff that needs to be lubricated, like door handles. But yeah, thank you all for watching.